them up or parodying. This is the actual situation. I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being unfair. That is the actual situation. Key point. The people doing the models never say that they are predicting future temperature. You will never hear that word in their vocabulary. A few years ago, when Bob Carr was Premier of New South Wales, he received a report from CSIRO, and CSIRO had charged the state of New South Wales, and they did similar reports for other states. I don't know how much, but a very significant sum of money. Have we got a climate projection for you, Premier, if you'd like to give us $1 million to do the job, or whatever. So did the job, and Bob Carr gets up in front of the television cameras and reads from the CSIRO report, or from his press release I should say, and says that the temperature in northern New South Wales is going to be 2.3 degrees warmer in 2100, and the rainfall pattern is going to be less, and so on and so forth. The newspapers and the television and you all accept that as a prediction of what climate's going to be. But that isn't what the scientists said. The scientists actually said, and you may think this is splitting hairs, but what it's about is covering your back. They said, we project that climate will be like that in 100 years' time. And scientifically, there is a gulf between a projection, which is a what-if experiment, perhaps this is how it might be in 100 years' time, from a prediction, which is a tested, validated, engineering, established way of using models to predict as opposed to project. So it is true that all the IPCC models project warming in 100 years' time. And they do that because there's no theory of climate. So the mathematics that they have in their models are incomplete. We know a lot about some aspects of climate, very little about others. They have to put in fudge factors, which are called parameters, especially for phenomena like thunderstorms, which are smaller in scale than the model grid. The grid that they model for the whole globe has sides of about 200 kilometres at the best. And thunderstorms are much smaller than that. So a phenomenon like thunderstorm can't be modelled directly using physics. It has to be modelled using a mathematical guess called a parameter. And again, I don't want to give the impression that I am against modelling or that I think it's stupid. It's an exceedingly powerful method of understanding things because it's playing. And that's what scientists do. It's really powerful playing. But there's a word called heuristic, which means serving to discover. And the value of the climate models is not that they give you predictions of what temperature will be in 100 years' time, because they don't. They give you what-if projections. Their power is because they teach you to think and examine and play with different ways that the climate behaves if you change things like the amount of wind shear, the amount of evaporation, the amount of rainfall, and so on and so forth. So they're very, very valuable things. I don't want to knock them, but they are not predictive tools. But they're being used as predictive tools by our government. That's a second thing to really worry about. Last comment about models, and then I'll take a question. All those models I've been talking about are GCMs, which stands for General Circulation Model. And the modern ones are coupled GCMs, which means they couple the energy exchange between the atmosphere and the ocean. So they do as good a job as they can. They recognise layers in both the atmosphere and the ocean. They have grid points over the whole globe with about 200-kilometre edge, and then they do the mathematics and the model whirs away, and out comes the projected temperature. These models are deterministic. You have to tell the model everything about the climate, and it will then project the future. There are other sorts of computer models that you don't hear about, and these are statistical computer models. And what they do is they look at the record, for example, the 150-year record of temperature measurements made with thermometers, and that record looks like this. It goes up to 1940, down to 1979, up to 1998, and now here we are here. So it's a sinusoidal curve. Okay, you analyse that curve mathematically and you fit a mathematical curve to it. Now you project that curve into the future. That's a statistical model. And there are a number of different ways of doing statistical models based on different climate data sets that have been done. 5 or 6 different ones. All of them project we are going to have cooling for the next 20 years. So there's more than one sort of computer model, but the only sort that you hear about are the GCMs, and they all project warming, and I would say as an aside, that's because they're designed to produce that result. But the other statistical computer models are not designed to produce any particular result. They just analyse the data as it is and project it into the future, project the pattern into the future, and they say we're heading for cooling. Okay, that's virtual reality.
So just for some clarification, do the models predict human effects or just the general climate change?
Both. And the claim is that they can back model, the word they use is retrodict, the temperature curve I've just drawn for you, the Thorne temperature curve. They say the models must be right because we can create that curve with our model if we put the human influence into the model. But if we leave the human influence out of the model, we get a curve which doesn't match that elapsed temperature curve. And that might be a valid reason if the model was truly tested and known to be accurate. But it's not, and the model is able to be manipulated in all sorts of ways. And I don't mean by that dishonestly manipulated, but just manipulated to get the outcome that's desired, which is to match that ancient measured temperature curve.
So is the 2 to 6 degrees, is that saying 2 to 6 degrees of human effect, or 2 to 6 degrees altogether, summing everything?
Altogether, but it's mainly, no, it's the human effect, it's the carbon dioxide effect.
By the way, what about Indigo Jones years ago was a long-range weather forecaster? I don't know whether there is one now, but he predicted, you know, changes in atmosphere over a long period of time, and the farmers and all these other people who paid for his advice, they took his advice, and sometimes that was pretty well accurate. Now I don't know how he based it, I don't know what he based his facts on, but apparently he had a wonderful system of long-range weather forecasting.
Can I just interrupt? Is this Mr. Indigo Jones, the film star I know about, or a weather forecaster?
No, he was a weather forecaster up in Queensland, I think he was.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, he's from Queensland. You wouldn't believe a word he said, would you?
No, but I mean, what I'm getting at is that he had his models, and he had it over a long period of time.
Sure.
I don't think we should scoff at him because I think he was a big bluey man. I mean,
you're absolutely right. I just couldn't resist the crack. I live in Queensland after all. But I'm not going to comment because there are many people who try to forecast long-term weather. As a scientist, all I will say is I'm aware of nobody that has been able to do it successfully. But that's my knowledge, and the gentleman you speak about, maybe he had a way of producing some useful forecasts, but I'm not aware. I can't comment beyond that. Okay, so 2 realities: science reality, virtual reality. Now, socio-political pathology. Around 1988, the big green organisations started asking the question, is carbon dioxide a greenhouse gas? And the answer to that question is yes. Well, they said, aren't we producing lots of it and putting it in the atmosphere? And the answer to that question is, well, no, not really. We're putting small amounts into the atmosphere in terms of the natural fluxes, but we are putting it in, and it is measurable. It's a significant amount. So yeah, give them that point too. Well then, mightn't dangerous global warming be occurring? And the answer to that question is, yeah, that's a good question. Excellent question to ask in 1988. So what the world did was think, we'll investigate that. So they set up a branch of the United Nations, and we'll all have our own view about whether that's a good way of setting up a, an effective body to deal with something, but they did, and it's called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And that panel has now produced 4 successive reports. One in 1990, one in 1995, one in 2001, and one in 2007. And I'll read to you in a moment the prime conclusion of each of those reports.